Hey everyone, and welcome to the HAZY Sports Podcast. NHL season is less than a week away, and Charlie, we've got our full season preview ready to go, starting with the Eastern Conference today. How are you feeling? You ready for hockey season to start?
I am pumped, Jason. I spent about 4 hours in different arenas yesterday watching. My daughter was the e-bug for the rep ringette team, and then my son played his first exhibition game in a place that we're familiar with, the old Belmont Arena,
Oh
where
yeah.
we faced off against future NHLer Brian Wilsey, and
Yeah.
he came out on top. I think I played about 3 shifts that entire series. So it was nice to sit on a bench again in the Belmont Arena.
Yeah, that when you sent me some pictures, that definitely brought back some memories for a couple different reasons. We had finally made it to the OMHA semifinals after beating our local rivals Ripley for the first time, which was a big deal. And then I believe that Brian Wilsey was actually like 2 or 3 years younger, like playing up, and he was still dominating. So you could tell he had a bright future.
One of the cool parts of having a kid in hockey is going to all these little towns and seeing like these NHL kids that came from these places that, a lot of people have never heard of. It's kind of cool. Like obviously we never probably looked at a town's, history and all their past teams. So, it's neat to look at that stuff now.
And one thing about that trip in particular that will always stand out, and I'll probably never live down, is we took a bus down as a team, and I forgot my skates. And even I had size 13 feet at that age. I believe I was in grade 7 or 8 at the time, and had to borrow a pair of skates from somebody locally that were like 2 or 3 sizes too small.
It's funny? Like as soon as I walked in that lobby, that's all I could think about was like our coaches raging, trying to locate any sort of pair of skates for you. So it's weird when you go back there and like the second I walked in that place, it was like it all came back. Like I was back there 30 years ago.
That's crazy, yeah, how certain arenas bring back that nostalgia and the memories. But that's pretty cool. So you're kind of as a hockey parent, your season's well underway already. But October 7th, we kick things off with NHL. We're gonna jump right into it. We've got a ton to go through. We're gonna be doing every team here. This episode, we're doing all the Eastern Conference teams. So we're going to do the Atlantic Division first, then the Metro. A lot to get through. So Charlie and I have kind of divvied up the teams here. He's taken the lead on 8 teams. I'm taking the lead on another 8 teams. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to break it down, starting with kind of go worst to first in terms of regular season points from last year. Before we get into that, though, we do want to keep our trivia segment going. We've had a lot of fun with that. And Charlie, you're up this time on trivia.
All right, Jason. So this week, we're sticking with hockey, and so the NHL has had a ton of high-scoring European players from Sweden, Finland, Czech, or whatever, Czechia, I guess it's now called, Russia. Sweden in particular has quite a few Hall of Famers, but only one Swedish player has ever scored 50 goals in a season. Can you name that player? So now we'll give the listeners and yourself some time to think it over, and we'll get the answer at the end.
Yeah, that's a great question. My brain's already spinning through all my favorite Swedes to play in the NHL.
I believe they have almost 40 different 40 goal scorers, but only one Swedish player has ever scored 50.
That's surprising.
I know, I couldn't
Actually,
believe it.
and 2 of the guys that are going through my head have the same last name here, but that'll be a fun one to think about, and I'll be looking forward to regrouping in the outro for the answer there. Okay, let's turn our attention to our focus for the day. We're going to break down the Eastern Conference. We're starting in the Atlantic Division. Worst to first, team that kind of had the bottom fall out last year was the Boston Bruins, finishing with 76 points in the Atlantic Division. And, just a year removed from putting the Leafs out in the playoffs and losing to the Panthers in the conference finals. So yeah, the bottom fell out pretty quickly. I have two questions here. We're going to do sort of a big question for each team to talk about. And I guess my question, which is still lingering from last year, is why did they fire Jim Montgomery? But more for this year, I guess the big question is this a retool or a rebuild for Boston this year? I'm gonna try to not use the term retool and rebuild too often, but I think it's pretty appropriate in this case. In Boston, you've got three franchise caliber players there. One on forward with Pasternak, one on D with McAvoy, and then you've got Swayman. So it's kind of they're in this pivotal moment where they could either rebuild or do they try to kind of just rebound quickly, building around those three guys. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, the Montgomery thing still makes no sense to me. And it's obvious, like, he was snapped up, within a week and a half by the Blues, and he turned that team around. I never understood that move. Maybe there was some sort of internal conflict. Maybe it was just, we got to get a new voice in here. But I thought that was probably one of the strangest moves of all of last year. As far as the team goes, I don't really understand what they're doing. Like, they gave all that money to Zadorov and Lindholm last year. Didn't work. They ran a team legend basically out of the building only to watch him go and win a Stanley Cup. And as far as the rebuild retool, like I think they're gonna have to tear this down because they didn't do anything significant this year in the off season, like anything that's gonna move the needle. Pasternak's still going to be an absolute stud, and you're hoping McAvoy's back healthy, but I have a hard time thinking they're going to be anywhere but the bottom four in this whole conference.
I kind of felt the same way. I don't see them really progressing too much this year, but it was more about is it a complete tear it down or can you make a few savvy moves in the next few years? They got Hagens in the draft, could be a nice piece for them. Not many guys have the luxury of those three cornerstone franchise guys at that position. That does allow you to back. And if you'd go with the complete tear it down, you kind of risk Pasternak and some of those guys aging out a little bit. So it makes you wonder, you can't really move off Pasternak. You
No,
probably will never get enough back to replace the value that he provides. But at the same time, how long is the Pasternak window?
I don't think they have enough scoring. Like, you look at the rest of the teams, even in this just in their division, like, they're going to be in tough. You probably got two or three of the best offensive teams in the whole Eastern Conference in this division. And outside of Boston's top line, I just don't see where any of the goals are coming from. I think they'll be a good defensive team. Goaltending's always solid, but scoring's going to be an issue.
I think they're probably going to tread water in terms of where they were last year. Let's keep things moving along here. We're on to our second worst team in the Atlantic Division last year, but a team that has a little bit more upside, I think, in the Buffalo Sabres. They finished 3 points ahead of the Bruins with 79 points. My question for the Sabres here is, can they build a culture where top players want to play there and want to stay there? They've obviously had tons of talent come through that organization, but they've had a tough time keeping them. Now they've got Dahlin as a potentially top 5 defenseman this year, and they've got Tage Thompson, who's a Rocket Richard Trophy candidate and kind of a unicorn as a 6'6" forward. That's I think he scored 47 goals last year and is just continuing to rise. They got rid of JJ Peterka and got a couple nice depth pieces with Kesserling and Josh Doan back. So it'll be interesting to see how that nets out. But they've got some pretty good depth. They've got some good talent. I see the needle pointing upward and good foundation they can build from. But can they build that culture where they can keep these guys together for 3-4 years to actually become a contender?
So this is one of the teams I think is going to make the biggest jump this year. Towards the end of the year, they kind of got on a bit of a heater there, and they were a very, very tough team to play closing out last year. You talk about keeping guys. I was just reading that Alex Tuck is now hasn't signed yet, but they're getting close on a long term with him. He's another guy that can put up 30, 35 goals easy for that team. The only issue for them, I think, is going to be goaltending. Like, they have they have two or three NHL caliber goalies, but I don't think any of them are an actual number one. So maybe one of those guys takes a leap. Like I love Devin Levi. There was some talk about Edmonton possibly trying to steal him, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I think the Sabres are actually going to be a pretty exciting team to watch this year. So I think they're on the up. And like that Kessel ring that they picked up for Paterka with him, Owen Power, and Darlene, like you got three legit defensive pairs right there. Like they're going to be good.
I think Buffalo's going to be a fun team to watch this year. They're going to probably be right on that bubble, that wild card bubble. We'll see when we get to our predictions where you kind of have them slotting in. Speaking of number one goalies, that's probably a nice transition to my Red Wings here, because the big question I had for them is, will John Gibson stay healthy all year, and can he get back to his old form and be that number one goalie? That was their one key off-season move. They've been right on the bubble, just a few points away from making the playoffs the last couple of years. And if they can get some solid goaltending, that might be enough to move the needle and get them into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, like that's another guy that Edmonton was sort of kicking the tires on, and I wish they would have pulled the trigger on that, because I think if he can stay healthy, Detroit's got to be a playoff team. Like they got to be one of the deepest teams as far as skill and young guys plus defense. And everyone's kind of shitting on the Iser plan, and he didn't make a big splash, but maybe something is coming, if they are on the cusp, because I think he was kind of kicking himself last year when they faded late, whereas if they would have made a bigger move at the deadline, maybe they sneak in. But I think Gibson's going to be great for them.
I think with the optimism I have for the Red Wings is they've got a great young core there, in terms of like Raymond and Seider being not quite franchise players yet, but they're knocking on the door if they take another step. They're both signed to great long-term contracts. They got Larkin for the long term. They've got Marco Kasper, who had a great rookie year last year. He played great at the World Championships. Simon Edvinsson also, I won't go through the whole lineup, but they've got a lot of guys at a nice point in their career that if they take that next step and keep growing together, they've got a pretty good nucleus to build a contender down the road.
And not only that, though, but they have, I believe they're in the top 4 in cap space, plus the assets you just named. Like they're in a position to make a big move if like a Kaprizov was to actually be available. I would think they would be one of the teams knocking on the door.
That would be amazing, because one of the big question marks for the Red Wings is who plays the other wing on the top line with Larkin and Raymond. Right now they're trying different guys through the preseason, and they'll probably try different guys throughout the regular season, but it'll be a fun team to watch, I think, with lots of good young talent. So we did this randomly in terms of who we decided who was going to take the lead on each team, but I just happen to have a few more here in the Atlantic Division. But we're back to you with Montreal.
Yep. All right, so this was one of the more exciting stories at the end of last year, with Ivan Demidov coming in and just injecting a crazy amount of energy into that building, and their late playoff run and couple playoff games. So my question is this a playoff or bust? Or, if they don't make the playoffs, is this a failure of a season? And not only that, but how does Lane Hutson improve on what was probably one of the best rookie seasons by a defenseman that I can remember in a long time? What are your thoughts?
Good questions. I don't think it's playoffs or bust, but I think it would definitely be a massive disappointment if they don't make the playoffs. They got in there, got some of those young guys with the good experience. I think, they're set up for the long term. I kind of put these guys in the category of future powerhouse, but maybe 2-3 years away from there. In terms of the Lane Hutson discussion, I think adding Noah Dobson's going to help his game. I've heard some discussion around they're almost like Makar Taves 2.0 in terms of their skill set. Obviously, they're not there, but that potential you could almost see. So if they played together, I think that would just raise the game for Hudson, and Might take off some of the defensive pressure there. Even if they put Dobson leading the second pair D, it's probably going to make for some easier
Crazy.
minutes for Hudson and is only going to help his game. But yeah, probably going to be tough to repeat the performance of last year. And he's got some great offensive skills, some shortcomings on the defensive side. So I think his focus is going to be raising his game from a defensive side. And he's so offensively gifted that I don't think you ever have to worry about that.
My worry with them is just the toughness side. Like, I don't know if they got the grit, and maybe they'll add something, as we get closer to the playoffs and the trade deadline and stuff like that. But one interesting player for them is Wi-Fi's brother, Florian Xhekaj, who
Okay.
he's not a tough guy like old Wi-Fi is there, but he's got some touch and he does play, a good two-way game. So it'll be interesting to see if he cracks the lineup this year. FanDuel's got them predicted at 90.5 points. So I think that would get them into a playoff spot. So they have them right on par with last year. I think they're going to be a little bit better than last year just because I think the conference is a little weaker, but should be a good year. They're going to be a fun team.
Absolutely. Let's go to another team that's right there with the Canadians in terms of their trajectory. Back to me to lead this one with the Ottawa Senators, 97 points last year. We saw them make the playoffs. First time Kachuk made the playoffs. My big question, it's not the most exciting question I have out of all these teams, but it's more, can the Senators take the next step this year? They took a huge step last year in terms of progressing forward. I think Brady is as good a captain as there is in the NHL, just in terms of those leadership qualities. I think Stützle's turning into one of the best young players around. Jake Sanderson is a borderline Norris Trophy quality defenseman, and Allmark in net can steal some games, and he gets hot. He is a guy you could ride in the playoffs. What do you think?
I have them taking a bit of a step back this year. I like the Jordan Spence pickup. I thought that was a steal. Like, I don't know. I'll get into Ken Holland later. Like, I think he might have been drinking when he was right around free agency. But I like the Spence pickup. It's the offense for me again. Like, are they going to get enough scoring from now? If they get in, they're going to be a tough out because I do like their toughness and I like their goaltending. But I think they're going to fall back a little bit this year just because I think some other teams are kind of on the rise and you got to lose points somewhere. But I hope they get in because I like the atmosphere in that building last year. It was great. And playoff Brady's a different animal. Like it's just must see TV. So I just think they're going to take a bit of a step back this year.
Yeah. So we'll see. Let's shift gears here to the next team, and another one for me. I really got a lot of these Atlantic Division teams, but next up is Florida Panthers, our two-time defending Stanley Cup champs, finished the regular season with 98 points. When I was originally preparing for this episode, my big question was, can they be the first team to three-peat in the last 40-some years since the Islanders did it? But after the Barkov injury going down for the regular season, my question is, how much will they be impacted by the Barkov injury?
So with him out and Kachuk out, right, till December, maybe he pushes that a little bit now because of this injury. And thankfully there's no LTIR help that you can just throw in another superstar. This could be a struggle here, right? Like 98 points last year and 91 got you the 8th seed. You drop I don't know what losing two superstars loses you as far as points go. But like this could be a grind just to get into the playoffs now.
I think they used to kind of treat the regular season as an extended preseason, but it might be a different story this year.
I saw a quote from Paul Maurice after the injury was announced, and he's like, everyone says next man up, and I appreciate the sentiment, but there is no next man up to fill Barkov's shoes, and like that just tells you the impact that guy has on games, and like that's a massive, massive loss.
And I'm not a Panthers fan, but that was like gutting to see, just a class act and a guy that plays the game the right way that's so well respected go down with kind of a fluky injury like that in practice before the season gets started.
Not to mention, he's one of the guys where the voice does not fit the guy. You know what I mean? Like he's this big, menacing dude on the ice, and then he has this super soft, high pitched voice. It always
Yeah,
kills me.
if you heard just the audio of one of his interviews, you wouldn't think that's one of the most respected leaders in the NHL.
So I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs, but I think they're going to be in a bit of a race that, come February, March to try and get in there.
When they signed Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand early in the offseason, people were pretty much just penciling them in as, getting to the finals again for the third straight year. This adds a few wrinkles to the plan for sure. Let's stay in Florida and go to their in-state rivals, Tampa Bay Lightning, 102 points. You're taking the lead on the Bolts here.
Okay, so they're predicted. The FanDuel odds got them at 104.5 points, which would put them second as far as the Eastern Conference. My question about Tampa Bay is, has the window shut, or is there another run? Like the names are still there, the coach is still there, but I don't know. They kind of got their asses handed to them last year, and I didn't really love the effort from Kucherov in the playoffs. Now, maybe he was banged up, but he looked kind of disinterested. 105 points seems like a lot for this team.
They've got a lot of depth. They've got the great coaching. They've got guys that have the experience, but they are kind of getting on in years. And is that window closing? That's a great question. I don't have a confident answer in that one. I think they're definitely, like, regular season wise, they're going to be there near the top of the conference, the top of the division. And there's certain teams, like, who cares about the regular season? We're only going to judge them on what they do in the playoffs. I haven't seen enough out of them to think that they could beat the Panthers again if they played in the playoffs. Maybe we're kind of sleeping on them because they were sort of like the glamorous pick heading into the playoffs last year of making another run.
I guess this is another example of the Barkov and Kachuk injuries where it could really benefit a team up the top. So I can't imagine 105 points, but like you said, they got the names and they've got the coach. So maybe I'm off. I don't know.
And you mentioned Kucherov there. I'd be interested to hear what guys on the Lightning think of him, because from just a body language standpoint, he just seems like the biggest dick. He doesn't seem like a guy that would really be a great locker room guy.
He doesn't seem like he's ever having fun. Like that shit at the All-Star game where they were doing the skills challenge, and he's basically just, out for a beer league skate. Now, I don't know, maybe he's just done with all the grind of everything, but I agree. He just looks like I don't know, like there's another gear there and he just refuses to get there.
Yeah, he seems to always be mad about something.
So let's close out the Atlantic with everyone's favorite team to talk about, the always polarizing Toronto Maple Leafs. 8 points last year, another crushing playoff defeat. We all know what happened. Mitch is gone. My question to you is, how do you replace 100 points? And do you really need to now that, Florida's got these injuries, Tampa's getting older? I don't see a real challenge other than Tampa in this division. They brought in Nick Roy. I always want to say Wah, but it's Nick Roy. Do they need the offense, or do you think it's just a switch in philosophy here, and maybe they finally fucking learned something?
Yeah, I think you get it by committee. You probably don't replace those points completely, but you supplement most of it with other guys having a chance to step up. For me, it's not so much the regular season points you need to replace. I think for Toronto, again, is one of those teams that nobody's going to care if they win the President's Trophy, and it's what they do in the playoffs. So I'm less concerned about replacing Marner's regular season points and more, what did he do in the playoffs, and can you replace that?
Can Nick Roy replace those 4 playoff hits that he had?
Exactly. That's why I'm not worried about them. It's not, I'm not discounting his value to the team, but was he a needle mover in the playoffs? Didn't really feel like it to me. I just think the change in chemistry of him not being there, the fresh look, and I think that's going to be enough. Like I feel like it's really a chemistry thing for the Leafs. If Stolarz doesn't go down against the Panthers, I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the Cup Finals and maybe winning it all.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Stolar stays in. They probably beat the Panthers. Maybe they don't win it. Maybe, if that happened, maybe old Mitchie's still here. So maybe it was a good thing that he's gone. But always polarizing Leafs.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens in that top line now, though, because it'll
Yeah.
be Nyes, Matthews, and I don't know. Have you heard of they slotted in the third guy on that line, or are they still kind of doing auditions?
I think it's kind of an audition thing, but I have a Leaf coming up in my conference summary that I expect big things from this year. So we'll tease that for later.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll stay tuned with that. That wraps up the Atlantic Division. Kind of a murderer's row, Like I am optimistic with my Wings this year, but looking at a division that has the Panthers, the Lightning, the Leafs, a surging up and coming Canadians and Senators, and even the Sabres, like that's a tough division. So
Big time.
it will be interesting to see. Let's switch gears. We're going to head over to the Metro Division. Starting from the bottom, we've got the Philadelphia Flyers coming in with 76 points last year. You're taking the lead on Philly here.
Yeah, so Philly 76 last year. FanDuel has them 82.5 points this year. I think they're going to be an entertaining team. I don't think they're going to threaten anybody. This is clearly, not a wasted year, but I think they're going to kind of see what they have. They do have a lot of good players. My question to you is, how long will Tocchet go before losing it on Trevor Zegras? Like, he kind of had enough with Elias Pettersson. I kind of see them as the same bit of a soft, flashy guy who's not interested in playing in his own end. And I don't know. I just don't see that relationship working out.
I kind of see this as a key moment in Zegras's career. Is he started off with the promise of potentially being a number one centerman in the league. Now best case sort of looks like maybe number two, but he had started off with all that promise and then just didn't really work out and work it well in the system in Anaheim here. I feel like if it's gonna work, it's going to work here. Tocchet has a pretty good reputation for getting the most out of young, offensively skilled guys. And I think if anybody can bring out the best in Zegras, it's going to be Tocchet. But you're right, he probably isn't going to have a super long leash. So he's going to have to kind of get with the program. But yeah, that's an interesting player to watch and an interesting team to watch. Like, Torts obviously keeps things buttoned down pretty good. So, I'm looking at a huge year out of Mishkov now that he's, will have sort of the offensive chains maybe taken off him a little bit.
Tyson Forster, too. Tyson Forster is going to be a force for them. They have some really good pieces here. It's just not a complete team.
If I was a Flyers fan, I'd be kind of excited for the future. So with the kind of the prospect pipeline they got coming up, I think the big question there is like, obviously Mishkov is their franchise player right now. You just don't see a lot of cup contenders with a winger as their best player. And, if Konechny's your number one center, that's not going to get the job done. They're going to be a fun team to watch this year, but not a playoff team.
No, agreed.
Okay, over to me for the Penguins. 80 points last year. Yeah, kind of an interesting period of transition for this team. I had the same type of question that I had for the Bruins is, do they commit to a rebuild or attempt to stay competitive with Crosby? What are your thoughts on the Penguins?
Well, number one, when do we start questioning whether or not Kyle Dubas is actually good at his job? Like, you're handed this team with some pretty solid, obviously veteran players, but they're awful. And he's done nothing to improve that team. I do like them picking up Shvilovs from Vancouver. I think he's going to be a future number one, but that doesn't move the needle. I don't know. I hate seeing these guys wasting the end of their career. I just want Crosby back in the playoffs. I'd like to see Malkin. He's not the same guy, but I want to see him playing in the playoffs. It's kind of a shitty end It's almost like Shaq at the end, where he's just bouncing from team to team. You just want to see these guys go out with one more shot at something.
They're one of these teams where best case scenario from a big picture standpoint is for them to finish as low in the standings as possible. So if you were taking that approach, kind of their big trade pieces are Raquel, Rust, and Carlson,
Yeah,
which I'd be surprised if all three of them are still on the team past the trade deadline. They need to get into the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, do the Lemieux to Crosby to McKenna
man, wouldn't that
baton
be?
pass would be ideal for the franchise, but at 38, can you really do that to Crosby? It's
So
definitely a tricky situation to
what about a Crosby trade re-signed next season?
well,
Now
that'd be
that would,
interesting.
right? Like you kick him off to Colorado or Montreal, whoever. He plays the rest of this year, maybe gets a shot. You know, if he does go to a Colorado, Pittsburgh bottoms out. You pick up McKenna and then you re-sign Crosby next year. I don't know that he would do that, but that would be an interesting scenario.
Yeah, that would be perfect, but it's hard. Yeah, like I say you get rid of it as much as you can for Raquel, Rust, and Carlson. In terms of prospects and draft picks, put
Raquel, Rust, and Carlson sounds like a personal injury law firm.
Oh, well,
All right,
yeah,
moving
either
on.
way, it's probably not going to be a fun season for Penguins fans.
Definitely not. All right, moving on to the Big Apple, the New York Rangers. They're predicted to have 95.5 points this year. Chronic underachievers, right? You go from the President's Trophy to a first round exit to just bottoming right out to where there's talk of, starting moving guys. But my question to you is, can Mike Sullivan, bit of a hard-nosed guy, I think a very good coach, can he finally get this underachieving team to the next level? Because they're loaded, they got great goaltending, they got great defense. Like there's no reason this team shouldn't be right there.
Yeah, I think he can. As the short answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're going to be a bit of a force this year.
Um, they're going to have the top D pairing that matches up as good as pretty much anybody. Yeah, with Shesterkin and net, if you get prime Shesterkin, I think that would be the tipping point.
Yeah, I expect them to be there right at the end. Like I think this is a team to watch out for in the Eastern Conference. Sticking in New York, next up we got the New York Islanders. 84.5 points predicted. I don't know. Not a not a lot to love here. I got two questions for you though. Can Matthew Schaefer compete for the Calder Trophy? I think he's going to get, a lot of run, and people were already saying like he might be in their top pair already. And then my other question is, will Ilya Sorokin still be an Islander in March?
I'm going to say yes and yes. I think I
That's
think Schaefer's going to have the runway, like you said, plenty of playing time. I think he's got the skills to do it. Do I think he will win the Calder? Probably not. But being in the discussion and possibly a nominee for the trophy is a good chance. I don't see them really easing him in. He's going to be on a middling team and probably be under fire a lot in the defensive end. So it's going to be a tough year. I kind of like on the defensive side. I like Bouillam's chances a little bit better just because of his age and had a little more time to develop on a bit of a stronger team. But I definitely think he's got a shot. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's I don't like I agree. I don't think he's going to win the Calder, but I think he's going to be right in the mix. I don't know if you saw any of his preseason stuff, but like he looks friggin' good. Like he is fast and he's not afraid to shoot. And I'm assuming he's going to be on power play 1 for that team and he's going to get some points. They're going to struggle for sure. But as far as Sorokin, you think he's still going to be there?
I don't know. Do you not think so?
I just think they can probably name their price when it comes down to trade deadline, and it's a quick a easy way to start your rebuild there. I know he's definitely their only star that they have, but you can fast forward your rebuild pretty quick if you were to move them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess I just thought, you have a franchise goalie like that, that could really soften the rebuild process and seeing how hard those guys are to come by. At what point do you replace him? So yeah, it's a good question. I guess it depends on how much you get for him. If there's a team out there just offering tremendous value
Every
that you can't, making them an offer they can't refuse,
I
then you got
guess
to go for it.
I'm just thinking timeline wise, like I don't think they're going to be good enough before, you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah,
you cash in
it might be 5 years away,
a couple
so you
years,
might
right?
be right. You might, by that time, Sorokin might not be the guy he is now, and you've missed out on a window to kinda hit a jackpot worth of.
Of trade value. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But anyways, we'll move on to one of my favorite multi-view teams from last year, the Columbus Blue Jackets. These guys, they were right there, a little bit of a late season collapse, and in for my opinion, one of the funnest teams to watch because it was a real run and gun. Like they're not that concerned with defending; they'd rather outscore you and kind of outrace you. But plus 200 to make the playoffs, which I think is a pretty interesting bet. They're slated at 85.5 points on FanDuel. So my question to you is, because I don't have a lot else to say other than they're fun to watch, is will Matthew Olivier have more fights or goals this season?
I'm gonna go with fights.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with fights. That's what he's there to do. Everything was kinda clicking for him on the offensive side. I'm not sure I see him duplicating that effort from an
No,
offensive standpoint, and some of the young players that they have coming up, will probably get more of the opportunities. So, yeah, I see him settling into his enforcer role, but still, still can put the puck in the net. But if I had to choose between those two, I'd go with the fights.
that's what I was thinking too. I think he had like the ultimate season last year, and going to see a bit of a regression on the scoring, and maybe that forces him a little bit more on the fighting side. So, but
Yeah,
honestly, they're one of my favorite teams to watch, and I hope they get into the playoffs because I that like having gone to that building, it's like they have great fans there.
that they are a fun team, and that's the tricky thing on the East is you have 6 or 7 teams right in there, so it'll be a bit of a crapshoot in terms of who gets in, but they're definitely kind of one of the teams knocking on the door, I think.
Yeah,
Okay, back to me. We're on to the New Jersey Devils. Finished last year with 91 points, finishing third in the Metro. A little line I had for these guys was singing the Hughes. That was my cheesy pun, but that's the kind of the takeaway I had. So we'll transition that into my big question is, has a team's future ever depended more on a group of brothers? Obviously, their best player is Jack Hughes, but can he stay healthy? Their top defenseman is Luke Hughes. Can they sign him to a contract? And all the rumors around Quinn wanting to play with his brothers, which, that's a whole other thing, but, obviously a possibility. If it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in New Jersey.
yeah, I'm expecting big seasons from both those Hughes brothers that are already there. Like I think Luke Hughes was starting to really you know find his game, I guess, in the NHL towards the end of last year. I think he's going to make a huge jump. This is another one of those teams where I think they'll be in the playoffs, but I just don't think they got the size and the grit to win playoff hockey. And maybe they make a move, but like I expect them to put up big regular season points, but I just see them fading again towards the end, and maybe Quinn Hughes is the answer, but to get a guy like that, you're going to give up so much, and I'm not really sure if that's the way to go. I think they're in, but I don't think they're a factor.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I was kind of thinking the same thing. I had this as a treading water team where I feel like they're probably, that 91 points they got last year is about where they're going to land this year, but that probably gets them in the playoffs and the first round playoff loss. I find teams like that not that interesting. I find either on a team that's either like a contender or on the rise, but these teams that are just sort of,
Yeah.
kind of the same each year, good enough to get in the playoffs, no
Yeah.
real threat, and you don't really see a path forward in the next, several years for them to become a contender.
Treading water is the perfect analogy. All right, we're on to Carolina. 106.5 points predicted on FanDuel, plus 440 to win the conference, which I thought is pretty enticing odds for a team that was right there towards the end last year. I like the addition of Ehlers, but my question to you is this just the same old team? Like you've added Keandre Miller and you've added Nick Ehlers, but you're still small. You're not a physical team. You still don't have the goaltending. What am I to believe? How am I to believe this is going to get you over the hump again?
I think it kind of is the same old team, and another team that you can pencil them into the playoffs, and we're only going to judge them of whether they get past the Eastern Conference Finals. I do think the offseason moves have made them stronger. In terms of depth wise, it's hard to find a team that has more depth up and down the lineup.
Crazy.
I do see them as like incrementally better than last year, even with some of their young guys like Stankova and Jackson Blake getting some good playoff experience. I feel like the Panthers are probably their main nemesis. I think I could see them beating any other team in the East, but I think the Panthers, if they're firing on all cylinders, you'll see the same outcome as last year. So the only way they make it to the Cup Finals, I think, is if some of those injuries that the Panthers suffered, or maybe the Leafs actually put them out this year, another team. But I think I could see them like hanging with any of the other teams in the East.
So the one interesting thing about this team though is they're not afraid to make a move. And they still have the insane amount of cap space. And when I was talking about Sorokin earlier, like this is one of those teams that I think could be in the Sorokin market if he were to become available. Or like they have this amazing depth at every position, and they still somehow are in the top 5 in cap space. Like they're run unbelievably efficient. So like they could make a monster move. So I guess I'm with you. Unless that monster move happens, I just don't see them being the force in the East.
Okay, well, let's finish out the Eastern Conference with the top team in the conference last year, Washington Capitals, and they finished with 111 points last year. My question to you is, can they sustain the regular season momentum they had without the OV goal chase enthusiasm around the team?
No, I'm selling this team. I think everything went right for them last year. I'm not discounting everything that Carberry did as a coach. I just think they were kind of over their skis last year. Like I think they're a good team. I just don't think they're a 111-point team. And I love some of the young guys they got. I don't see it happening again this season.
I'm on board with you there. I felt the same way. Everything kind of went perfect last year. They had that glorious run with the OV gold chase that I think sort of raised the level of play of everybody.
The betting market has them at 94 points, so that's quite a
Okay.
significant drop off. So we're looking like geniuses there.
I think the way the playoffs unfolded was a better indication of where they're at. They're a better team than the Montreals of the world right now. But as soon as they got against Carolina, they showed some weak spots. I'm kind of intrigued by the Protas brothers, Ryan Leonard, and a few of these young guys. So
Yep.
they'll be there in the playoffs, but probably not a real factor to contend for the cup.
No.
All right. Well, that was a nice run through the conference here. We're going to do a little bit of a conference summary wrap up. Each going to do a team that we're buying and selling, a bold prediction, a breakout player, somebody that's on the hot seat, and ultimately who we see making the playoffs from this conference. So let's start with our market watch for this conference. Give me somebody you're buying and somebody you're selling.
All right. I am buying the Buffalo Sabres. I see them not only contending for the 7th or 8th spot, but I actually have them being quite a force this year. It's obviously going to contend on health and somebody taking the reins as the number 1 goalie. but I am all about the Sabres this year, and I think they're going to be in the mix. Uh, come Mark.
All right, I'm buying the Red Wings. All right, I already got my hoodie here. I'm trying to track down one of those Centennial jerseys. Obviously, a bit biased here as a Red Wings fan, but I think there's reason to believe I'm buying them on the basis of Gibson having a career year, all the young guys making the next step, and Yzerman making a move at the trade deadline to bring in bigger gun to round out that top six forwards. And I'm not obviously expecting them as a cup contender, but I think just getting into the playoffs, getting those young guys some playoff experience, and maybe winning a round would be like a huge step forward. So I'm buying the Red Wings.
Okay, I'm actually doing 2 buys this week. I got a
Okay.
bit of extra cash from all that NFL betting, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna dip into the buy market, and I'm buying the Leafs signing Matthias Michelli. So he comes over from Utah. He's never really played with any high end guys, and I think he's going to get the opportunity. He put up 49 points and 57 points in seasons with Arizona and Utah. Guy is not a Mitch Marner-esque passer, but he is a good passer. And I think if he gets some power play run, he's going to put up some decent numbers. So bit of a down year last year, but I think, giving put in the right spot, this guy could put up 75 points easy for the Leafs. So I'm buying.
Okay, I'm selling the Washington Capitals. We kind of touched on on it on our very last review, so I won't rehash. I just I don't see them repeating last year's performance. Still probably a fringe playoff team, but definitely a regression from last year. So I'm selling there. What about a bold bold prediction from your end on the Eastern Conference?
Okay, my bold prediction is Crosby and Malkin will not be Pittsburgh Penguins come April.
Okay, wow, that would
I think they're both moving on, and whether it's a re-sign later on, come back to the city, I just think these guys are going to realize, well, this could be it. Let's get out of here and take one more shot.
Okay, yeah, I like it. That would be some entertaining podcast content to cover, and would be fun to see Crosby, especially get another shot at it. Imagine if they were a package deal going to the same team. That would be pretty cool. My bold prediction is Matvei Michkov scores over 100 points this year. He
Boom.
he got 63 last year, but we saw him go on a tear. Torts, as soon as Torts got let go, and I think Tocchet's going to get the most out of him. So he's going to be the guy, get all the power play time, get all the chances in the world. So I just, I'm bullish on Mishkov. I think he's going to take a big step and solidify himself as one of the top tier guys in the league this year.
I like that.
Okay, who's your breakout player?
So for my breakout player, all the hype is going around Demidov, but I'm taking Yuri Slavkovsky as a breakout candidate for the Habs. 18 goals, 51 points last year. If you put that guy out there on a power play with a Demidov, he's just going to have more space and he can absolutely rip the puck. I see him putting up 30 goals this year easily on like on an offensively loaded team like that. And he's not afraid to go and in the the shitty areas to bang in a goal or two, and he's probably going to have to. But I just think that guy is due for a big year.
They get that kind of year out of Slavkovsky, and I think you see Montreal, make a bit of a run in the playoffs, at least into the second round. My breakout player, again, I'm sticking with the Flyers here, and maybe it's more a bounce back, but I see Trevor Zegras as having a breakout year. A lot of this is just my faith in Tocchet as being a great coach, getting the most out of these guys. Zegras was not really a great fit for the system there in Anaheim when he was there. He seems to be more comfortable in the Flyers organization. He's good buddies with Drysdale there. So just chemistry-wise, I think it's going to be well suited for him to showcase his skills and get back to that guy that we saw early in his career. And so I see a breakout / bounce back performance for Trevor Zegras.
I like it.
Okay, things are getting hot in here, Charlie. The seat's warming up. Who do we got in our hot seat discussion?
Okay, I'm just going back to your Red Wings. I think Stevie Y is on the hot seat. I think he's got to make something happen there, whether it's a big move at the deadline or letting some of these kids get in there and play. But I think the Yzer plan may be running its course, and I think things have got to change for Stevie Y. So he's my hot seat candidate.
It must be really hot on that seat because that's who I had written down too. 6 years. The Yzer plan has been going on for 6 years. No playoffs in that time. Knocking on the door a few times. And I think if this was anybody other than a Red Wings legend, they might have been gone already. So he's had a little extra leash, I guess you would say, to work his plan. But this has got to be the year. That's why I'm buying on the Red Wings. Stevie's my guy. I'm not counting him out, but yeah, that seat is getting hot. And if they don't do it this year, they may
He's
have
out.
to. He's out. Yeah. All right. No, those are some interesting predictions that will be fun to follow throughout the year. So let's just take one last snapshot of the playoff picture here. Let maybe start off with which teams are you kind of penciling in for no-brainer for sure making the playoffs, and then we can talk about sort of some of those bubble teams.
All right. I think obviously Toronto, Tampa, Carolina, Washington, New Jersey, I think are all pretty safe. Would you agree?
You don't have Florida on that list?
Yeah, and Florida, and Florida.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I had New Jersey as a potential step back team, but
Step back.
yeah, let's say for sure.
Wait, I forgot the Rangers. I got them as a lock.
Yeah, so to me, that's 7 right there. So that only
Yeah,
leaves one spot for Detroit, Ottawa, Montreal, and Buffalo.
man, that's tough.
Yeah, the Eastern Conference is a bit of a meat grinder.
I'm gonna say Buffalo because I've been pumping the Buffalo tires here. So I'm gonna say Buffalo gets in and Montreal somehow doesn't.
I'm going to say New Jersey falls out of the playoff picture. Detroit gets in and Montreal gets in. The other 6 teams I might be seeing the Red Wings chances through rose-colored glasses, but I do like the Sabres as well. I see where your optimism is coming from there, but at the end of the day, only 8 teams can get in here, so somebody's got to go. So out of all those teams, I see New Jersey or Washington kind of being the most vulnerable to fall out, but it's hard to see Washington not getting enough done in the regular season.
I definitely see them falling, but not out of it. Although if they're predicting 94 points, like you're one injury away from being out then.
Well, it will be fun to follow, Charlie, and that's exciting. Yeah, so good little preview. That's our Eastern Conference. Now we head to the outro. I've had a little time to think of your trivia questions, so just recap that for me and for the listeners. So,
Okay, so the question was, only one Swedish-born player has ever scored 50 goals in the NHL. Can you name that player?
yeah, I don't think Zetterberg ever scored 50. He'd be, one of the better Swedish forwards.
He was close, but no, not 50. If you need a hint, I can give you a hint.
Well, honestly, my first guess was going to either Marcus or Mats Naslund. Was it either of the Naslund?
Neither Naslund. No. I believe they were in the 40 goal range, but never 50.
Okay, yeah, I better take a hint then.
All right, so the hint would be he had one of the worst helmets of all time. Even Peter Klima would say this guy's helmet is a mess. And it's in the 80s and a Canadian team.
Was it Nielsen?
No.
No.
That's a good guess, though. I believe he had 45, but he was on the same team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to give up. It's a great question.
From the Calgary Flames, Håkan Lube, 50
wow.
goals with an absolute lunchbox of a helmet.
Yes. I forgot about him. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like the only guy, like you start thinking about your Forsbergs, your Naslunds, your Zetterbergs, even Matt Sundin. It's hard to believe he never scored 50 goals. Like I was blown away by that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Anybody out there that got Håkan Lube, well, props to you there, because yeah, he's not a name that comes to mind first when you think of those Swedish legends. So yeah, great question there, Charlie. Thanks for that. I'll be up next for our trivia in our Western Conference preview. Before we wrap up for the day, I guess we should just do a little touch on our NFL and MLB. Where do you want to start there?
Well, we can quickly go through the NFL because we continue to struggle. I was one
Yeah.
and one again. I believe I'm minus $910 on the year. I just can't get a handle on this. I mean, that's why the casinos, they build them really big because they're not losing money.
Yeah, well, you're one win ahead of me. I'm 0-6 on the
Two
year. My
wins ahead of you.
2 wins, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 2 and 4.
Oh, okay. I'm 0-6, so yeah, hopefully people haven't been following my picks too close. And as of the time of this recording, I picked the Vikings over the Steelers. Is not looking good. They were getting their ass kicked in Ireland this morning, so I'm well on my way, if not already there, at the 0-7. So I'll be counting on the Raiders to get the job done later today to get my first win on the board and get me back on the plus side here.
Yeah, it's been a tough year. But later on today, we got the biggest baseball game of the year, too. The Blue Jays Yankees winner gets the bye and the AL East division, which it's hard to believe after 162 games, it literally comes down to the last game of the year. It blows my mind.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch amongst the NFL Sunday. So, yeah, a big sports day to finish up. My Tigers, they stumbled all the way to the finish line, but finally secured a spot in the playoffs. So, hey, the table can reset now. We'll see what happens.
There is one scenario, too, where if the Blue Jays lose, Detroit wins, and Cleveland loses, that the Jays would play the Tigers in the wild cards.
Oh, that
I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping the Jays win the division and get the bye, but that would be make for some interesting pod.
Well, if that happens, we may have to go double or nothing on our bet, because now you won the regular season bet. I guess I don't want to get too far in the hole, but maybe we'll come up with another little side bet for that. But congrats on winning that bet. That was quite the comeback. It wasn't looking good early in the year, but Jays surged at the end. The Tigers tripped over the finish line here, but both are in the playoffs, so we'll see what happens there. And with that, we're going to wrap up our Eastern Conference preview. Thanks everybody for listening. Stay tuned. In the next few days, we'll be putting out the Western Conference preview and getting everything finalized for the kickoff of the season, October 7th.